Hi everyone and welcome to this fireside session at UPPSTART 2021. We are here today to talk about the highs and lows of startup life. A lot of my friends often ask me, why aren't you interested in working for big corporations? Do you really want to be a firefighter in a startup roller coaster? That's what we are going to talk about today in this session. The startup life is not for everyone, that's for sure. But for those of you who can't resist this life, I hope that this session will give you tools and advice on how to deal with the highs and lows of startup life. My name is Josefin Svensson, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer for a femtech company called Bonzun, recently listed on the stock market. We have developed the app Bonzun IVF that supports women and couples with fertility problems. And we also have a digital program helping companies and their employees to reduce their stress. Except from that, I'm running a podcast about ADHD. And for the most of my working life, I've been living in startups. And I say living because I'm a true believer that the borders between life and work are dissolving. And that's why I believe that we all need to be more conscious of our minds and bring up all the important topics related to it. Saying that, I would also like to thank UPPSTART for putting attention on this important track, Mind, at this tech conference. But now it's time for me to present a very inspiring mind as my guest today. Here with me today to discuss this topic is Sarah Porter. She is the CEO and founder of InspiredMinds, the world's largest and fastest growing emerging technology community, with over 200,000 members in 168 countries. Inspired Minds connect the global AI ecosystem from enterprise to big tech, startup, investors, and science. And since 1996, Sarah has launched over 20 tech-oriented products in different industries across 11 countries. So she definitely has a record of success in taking ideas from inception to market with worldwide expansion and growth. And she's definitely the one that I would like to talk to about the highs and lows of startup life. Welcome to this session, Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks for the amazing introduction. Thank you, UPPSTART, for having me. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. And congratulations on your IPO.
Oh, thank you so much. How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. I'm cozy and warm. We're sitting here in the UK and it's been snowy and quite chilly. So I've got fires and candles and all sorts of things going, but I'm very well, thank you. You're not so well, I can hear.
Yeah, I would like to excuse the audience as well because I'm having a terrible cold. So I'm glad that I can stand up today. So you have to excuse my voice. But Sarah, I'm so curious to know more about how you founded Inspired Minds. That's from what I heard a really roller coaster and an interesting story. But before we start to discuss that, I would like to ask you, what are the three main emotions you had during your startup journey?
That's a really good question. So I'm a very emotional person, as the people that work with me will tell you, and I think that emotions can fuel progress. But startup life is really difficult. So when I first started Inspired Minds, I met a chap called Eamon Carey from Techstars, and he said to me, expect daily startup life to be peaks and troughs, for it to be extreme highs and absolutely devastating lows. And I thought, yeah, I'll be fine. You know, I've launched loads of products. What's the matter? But I would say the three main emotions that I have felt has been fear, elation, and awe. I would say I was going to say disgust because I wanted to kind of throw that in there because there is a little bit of disgust in some of the things that have happened and that I've experienced. But I would say those are probably my three main emotions: fear, elation, and awe, which for me sums up the highs and the extreme lows.
Yeah. Please, can you develop on disgust?
Yeah. On disgust, yeah. I wasn't going to put that in there, but I did. I think as a I know this is a gender orientated discussion, but as a woman who's running a business, and I'm a single mother of 3 young children, and when I started my business and started Inspired Minds, they were, that was 7 years ago, so they were even younger. I have faced some obstacles, I would say, that are incredibly frustrating because they're nothing to do with my ability as an entrepreneur or the potential success of my business. And that really relates to things like exclusion from VC funding or doors just simply being closed because I didn't fit the ideal then of what an entrepreneur should be, which was unfortunately at that time. And I do believe that things are changing, but that was a white middle-aged guy, and I'm obviously none of those things. So I think disgust really for me is just frustration at the system, and whilst I believe that that's changing, and that's probably not so much something that I encounter on a daily basis now, it's something that I have encountered as a startup founder.
But you founded Inspired Minds in 2016, but how did it all start? Can you tell us about the beginning of the story?
Yes, of course. Yeah. So Inspired Minds, I'll start with the name. So it comes from inspired in Latin means to breathe life into. And I'd worked in tech and in conferences and large scale summits and also in media and acquisitions and all sorts of different things over the years. And I felt that the industry was very tired. And I felt that really there needed to be an organization that was looking at breathing life into that sector. So what I wanted to do was create tech summits that had a moral value and a purpose that basically enabled people to be empowered in their roles. So that's more about the type of people that we're employing in their working environment. And then also just a very, very different style of summit, if you like. So we were going much more down the tech festival route. So that's where the name Inspired Minds came from. My journey personally was I had worked as a consultant over the years. I'd run my own business for a number of years. I'd also joined corporate organizations. And what became very clear to me as a very rude awakening is that I am not an employable person that will fit in a corporate organization. I am an entrepreneur. And my skill sets are best used when I'm running my own business. So that's pretty much how Inspired Minds came about, through that rude awakening and me realizing that actually corporate life really wasn't for me, and the best thing that I could do was go and run my own stuff.
Would you say, like, when you started Inspired Minds, was it a conscious choice you made, or you said that you always been an entrepreneur? In what kind of ways have you felt that before you started a company?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I think that people are born entrepreneurs. So I do believe that people have a certain type of skills that make them, from a DNA perspective, more able to cope with the entrepreneur life. So, and I believe I was born with those sets of natural skills and ability that makes me a good entrepreneur. And one of those things is your ability to deal with uncertainty. And some people, and that's not a criticism of anybody else that chooses corporate life and chooses that that's the right life for them, but some people need certainty. They need to know that they're going to be paid at the end of the month. They need to know that they have job security. They need to know the direction of what they're doing on a daily basis, and that's perfectly fine, but that's not me. I am happy to put myself in a situation where I have a degree of uncertainty about all of those things and then take the risks that come with that. And I think as a person, you have to be the type of person that can embrace uncertainty and be able to deal with the uncertainty that comes with running a startup. From the conscious decision point of view, though, I would say, yes, I knew that I always had that skill set, but actually taking that step into starting a startup, as many people here will know, is really tough. And sometimes it takes you being in a situation where your back's against the wall to force you into actually taking the big leap of faith, if you like. And that's kind of what happened with me a little bit, is I was in a situation where I had 3 young children. As I said, I was financially responsible for them. I wasn't going to be able to go back into a corporate life because it almost destroyed my spirit, if you like. And I knew I had to do something substantially different, and also something that addressed my why and my moral values and the things that I wanted to do as a person. So yes, it was a conscious decision to step into entrepreneurship, but if I hadn't, then would I still have a roof over my children's heads? So and that's the situation I found myself in.
During this journey, have you ever experienced that feeling of, we have been talking about highs and lows, or we are supposed to talk about highs and lows of startup life, but have you ever experienced that feeling of hitting the bottom as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Ooh. I mean, my answer to that would be, firstly, what is the bottom?
Yeah, exactly.
What's the definition of the bottom? Because I'm not sure if I've hit that yet. I'm sure at some point, maybe I will. But I've had some extreme lows of being an entrepreneur. And
yeah, speaking about extreme lows then.
Extreme lows, yeah. So in situations where I found myself, in extreme situations. So to give you an example, and they're probably more so at the start of Inspired Minds, in the very early days of doing what I was going to do, there was one evening where I found myself quite literally sitting on the kitchen floor, sobbing, with a bottle of wine, on the phone to my friend saying, why have I done this? You know what? help me. How do I get out of this? And all I was trying to do in my mindset at that time was escape the situation that I was in. I was constantly trying to find a way out of, I really don't want to do this because it's incredibly scary, and I really don't want to have to run this great big summit next year. And so I was constantly looking for a way out. And my friend then said to me, you have to take that fear that you have. It's just fear. And you have to take that fear and you have to quite literally visualize yourself burying it, and bury that fear and get over it. And yes, okay, it's still all right to feel it, but you now have to have the courage to take the steps forwards and do this regardless. And I think once you, as an entrepreneur and a founder, make that conscious decision that, yes, things are going to get really, really tough, but embrace those obstacles, which I now do. I see them as opportunities. And then also realize that no matter what happens, you're never giving up. So you will never, ever, I will never give up. I will never resign from my role. You'll have to take me out kicking and screaming. I will not do that. And once you make that conscious decision that you do that, you become unstoppable. And that's the mindset then that will fuel you through those darkest times, in combination with your why of why you're doing it and everything else. But even if things go wrong, failure is not failure if you choose to use it to your advantage. If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. But what would you say are the most common myths or preconception about the startup life? I know that a lot of people right now looking at this are in the startup sphere and know how it is to be working in a startup, but sometimes it could be challenging to explain how it is for your environment or your friends or family. But have you experienced any myths or preconceptions about the life as an entrepreneur or in a startup?
Yeah, I do. And I probably have quite controversial views on this. I mean, there's the obvious ones to start off with, the obvious ones for me, which is you really don't have to raise VC backing to be a successful startup. And there's an awful lot of focus on, we celebrate funding rounds, we celebrate acquisitions, we celebrate IPOs, we celebrate all of these things as metrics of success of a startup. And I question that, because there are times we've never raised VC funding. We've been approached by VCs who wanting to give us their money, which is great, but we've chosen not to go down that route. And I think it's a myth to believe that to be a successful entrepreneur and a successful founder and a successful business, that the metric of success is VC funding. So I think that's one of the things that I would say is quite controversial. The other is similar to that, which is that growth and speed of growth is a metric of success. And I disagree with that. So I agree, if I had my way, we would be launching 10, 15, as my team would sigh now with like despair, we'd be launching 10, 15 products tomorrow, because we have so many ideas as a business and opportunities to pursue. And we would be able to then rapidly grow, if you like. But that, for me, is a myth. Growth and scale is not always the right thing for an entrepreneur and a founder to do in an early stage of a business. And quite often the focus is on how quickly have you grown. I would say that the key metric of success actually for a startup is value, and value to your customers. And then once you have that value embedded, that's where the growth will naturally come, which might seem obvious, but I think it's a myth to believe that actually it's scale and growth that is the right thing. I think the other thing that I think is controversial is that the competition matters. Where did this come from, this obsession with what your competition is doing? And people spend an awful lot of their time looking at what competition is doing and then trying to outpace them. We have a laser focus on what we're doing, and I am not interested in competition whatsoever. And I think it's a myth to believe that you should measure what other people are doing in your market space. And then finally, I was to say there's a bit of a backlash at the moment against the hustle mentality. So, we see a lot at the moment that people are talking about, you don't have to be, it's not all about the hustle. I disagree. I think if you're going to be an early stage startup and you're going to be an entrepreneur and a founder, and you're choosing to make that decision that that's the role that you're going to do in life, then expect to work really bloody hard. And yes, okay, there comes balances with that. And there's ways to balance that, which I think we're going to talk about in a second. But ultimately, the hustle is important, right? And you have to be, as a founder and an entrepreneur, you have to be naturally obsessed with your business. And with that comes a sacrifice. And if you don't want to do that, then choose to do something else.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my second question about this work-life balance that I really think is important to you at least talk about. But is it realistic to find work-life balance as a founder of a successful startup? What do you think?
Yeah.
You were into this.
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced this firsthand when I've got it very, very wrong. I would say yes, it is possible to find the balance, and I think it's important to find the balance for your mental health, which is obviously what this session is about. It comes back to that point about being obsessed as a founder about your product, and it's very difficult to say to a founder or an entrepreneur, okay, look, you need to actually have some downtime, because when you're so buzzing about a product or a business that you're building, and you're starting to see the kind of little metrics of wins, then it's really difficult to say step away from that and actually deprioritize your focus, if you like. So I think startup founders naturally are obsessed about their products, and therefore they will and should be investing the majority of their energy and time into building that business. You need to have a very good support network around you, a partner that understands that actually right now, this is probably my priority in my life. But then also I'm a mother of 3 children and I haven't neglected them. They're still here. So, obviously there is a balance that comes with that, which is, I have to set aside time where I know that I am going to give them 100% of my focus. I'm not going to do anything else in that time. I will switch my phone off and I will deprioritize everything else that I'm doing to give them that quality time. But there will be times when I get that very, very wrong.
We're soon running out of time, but speaking about turning off your phone and be in the moment, so to say, do you have other coping strategies to manage stress or to prioritize?
Loads. We haven't got much time, so I'll whiz through them really quickly. I think I've really, really practiced this. So I'm a massive fan of Stoicism. I use Stoicism in the right frame. So I use choose what you can, what can you change, and what is within your control and what is not within your control. And that instantly gets rid of half of your stress, because actually if you're stressed about something that you can't control, that's a waste of time. And Stoicism teaches you that. I think in terms of daily practices and things that I do, I'm really actually quite regimented. So I start my day with, the first thing I do is put on a YouTube motivational cheesy talk, and I always do it without fail, and I listen to that in the background because it gets me into the right state. So it's something that I do to start my day off right. I do cold showers, I exercise every day, I have a personal phone and a work phone, I turn them off. I never use email, which some people find really frustrating, but I find that if I'm going to check email, I'll probably do it 2 or 3 times a week, and that's on my email, and people know to expect that. These are all things, and these are all things that I do that if something is urgent enough, somebody will get hold of me via WhatsApp. And email, as far as I'm concerned, is an innovation killer, and I don't use it.
So how to reach out to you then?
Call me. WhatsApp, turn up at my house. It's just, we spend so much time on email, crafting emails, and looking at why. It's just as far as I'm concerned, it's just a complete and utter waste of time. If I want to talk to a customer or a client, yes, okay, I might send them an initial introduction, but I'll reach out to them on social media, or I will call them and speak to them. And I just think email for me is something that as an organization, we've really stepped away from using.
Really interesting. Okay, I think that we need to go through the questions we have to. We have 1 minute left. So we have a question here from Carl Fredrik Baumgarten. How are you reasoning about budget, and what's your idea about financing? When you start when you first start a company and have no proof of product or proof of interest from potential customers, how do you find a way to finance your dream or company?
Yeah, really good question. So we're from the beginning, InspiredMinds were a cash flow positive company. So in terms of, we didn't spend anything in the first 3 months until we had our first revenue coming in. So, and then we've always survived completely in the black. We have no credit. We do everything by financing from customers, which I understand is a challenge. It's just something that really worked for me personally, because I don't like the idea. In terms of financing, I did get angel investors. I also sold my home and invested all of that money into my business. I cashed in my pension. I sold my car. I put money on credit cards. I did all of those things because I believed in my business and my product. And then I went out and I pitched people, angel investors and small amounts of investment, just enough to see us 3 months down the road until we could start doing that through customers. I know that that's unique, but in terms of proof of interest and potential, really, I would go and look at MVP models. So look at your minimum viable product that you can go out to market with, and then basically pivot your product as you go until you start to get traction on revenue. Easy to say, but hard to do.
Okay, I have one last question for you, Sarah. What advice would you give to founders here in the audience, maybe, that is right now struggling with making the most out of their time and is close to hitting the bottom, except from not answering emails anymore?
Yeah. My advice would be, firstly, ask yourself one question, and is that, are you willing right now to quit? Go look in a mirror and ask yourself that question. Are you ready to quit? Are you ready to give up on this, your dream? The second thing I would say is stop living in history and start living in imagination. So visualize the future as you want it to be. Visualization is really, really powerful. And I think start to actually see what you want to happen come true. So that's just more of a psychological win. Make daily progress. So you look at the Navy SEALs and the way that they do things, they take 20 minutes of training and they do that repetitively over a period of time. And that then builds up to them becoming really successful. Business is exactly the same. If you feel completely overwhelmed and that there is absolutely nothing that you can do, you're paralyzed by fear or you're hitting rock bottom, as you say, make a list, eliminate 70% of it, take the top 3 things, do the first one on that list as a priority, and then you have made progress that day. Mark it off as yourself, say to yourself, I did that, I made progress today, and then move forward the next day. And I think that's something that for me as a founder is really important. I get overwhelmed. There are days when I feel like I can't be productive. Do one thing. Just do one thing with courage that makes you feel like you're moving forward.
Just one thing.
I mean, just do one thing. One thing. It doesn't. The same applies to exercise, right? If you're doing exercise, people believe they have to go to the gym, they have to knock out an hour and a half workout and all the rest of it. Change that mentality. The mentality should be actually go for a 5-minute walk, put your trainers on, walk out the door and go. And the same applies to business and a startup. Do one thing, send one email and applaud yourself for doing it. And that's it. At the end of the day, if you feel that you've made progress, then you've made progress. And those little things build up, momentum builds up, and that overall becomes successful. Don't minimize the minutiae, is something I always say.
I can just agree with everyone in the chat saying thanks for the great advice, Sarah, and also see someone here. You are doing the best. Keep hitting the bottoms. And saying that, I would like to thank everyone who have been listening to this and will listen to this on YouTube later. And thank you, Sarah, for taking your time. And yeah, I could talk for hours with you. I feel like that now.
Oh, that's a good thing. Let's chat after. Yeah. I would say one thing is, just because we didn't talk about it that much, I know we've got a few seconds left, but from a mental health point of view and the struggle and the daily struggle, I do know what that's like. And it's very easy for me to sit here and say, do all of these things, but these are coping strategies that I've put in place because I've been in those lows. And I would say if anybody is genuinely in business right now and they really feel that they are hitting rock bottom, then get in touch with me. Because I will happily take 20 minutes out or half an hour out or half a day out or whatever to help anybody that's feeling that they're in that situation, because I've been there. So please do just get in touch with me. If you really think that you're hitting rock bottom, I can guarantee you're not, but I'll be able to help.
Thank you for adding that.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And thanks to the audience as well. Have a great day, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers.